table, and we have seen what is a driver, what are the types of drivers present, and the way of using a driver in the Selenium code. So this is and such few examples of selectors in a page. So this is what we have seen in the last session. So any doubts? You guys have practiced or something? You got any doubts in these particular cases till now? Anyone? Okay. Types of drivers. So you got any issue in that, or you want me to repeat in that part? Hello. So you want me to repeat that particular topic? Okay, fine. So yeah, sure. So types of drivers is nothing but you see when you actually make a web HTML page as such. So there might be certain restrictions regarding that this particular page works only in this particular like IE specific or Chrome specific or Firefox specific or Opera specific, Safari specific, etc., etc. Right? So at some point, it becomes compulsory that when you write a test suite, that particular web page need only this particular kinds of test suites. Okay, say it has to be IE specific test cases. So in that scenario is where you will need to write or instantiate a specific web driver. So in general, whenever you test a particular thing or write a test case script, you can by default go and instantiate a Firefox driver. So drivers are nothing but when that is the base, handler which will help you to interact with a browser. Okay, so for each kind of browser, you have a different kind of drivers. So you have a Firefox driver, you have a Chrome driver, you have a IE driver, and etc. Okay, so in general, you can go ahead and use the Firefox driver and write your test scripts. But just in case, if you have any specific scenario where the web page should be tested in a particular web, IE specific or Chrome specific, you can just go ahead and use that particular specific driver and write your test case. So these are the main reason why we have multiple drivers. Now a driver as such is a handler which will help you to interact with the web page and execute all your scripts one after the other. And we have also seen what is the additional care to be taken when you actually try to invoke a web driver apart from the Firefox. So you will have to set this system.set property and the driver exe path so that it will start executing. Else you will start getting a runtime error. That is the only extra step which you need to write when you are trying to use a driver apart from the Firefox. Clear, or you want me to repeat? Okay. Any more questions? Anybody tried setting up a project and then running a test case, running through it, a sample piece of code? Okay. So what is a web driver? A web driver is a handler which will help you to say, if you see here, so in the starting of my code, when I executed this, I have instantiated a driver. It's a Firefox driver. Okay, so this particular driver is what I'm going to use in my rest of the program for interacting with the elements or the web page. Okay, so driver is the main handler which will help you to start interacting with a web page and its respective elements. So that is why it is essential for us to actually instantiate a web driver. Fine. Now there are different types of web drivers. So we have actually a web driver for each type of the browser. So we have Internet Explorer, IE Edge, we have Firefox browser, we have Chrome browser, and etc. So by default, you can go ahead and use a Firefox browser for writing your test cases. But just in case if your web page has a specific condition saying that it works only in for IE or only for Safari, then you can go ahead and instantiate that respective browser driver and write your respective test cases. So this is the driver part. You want me to repeat again? Or can you, if you can just tell me which part of the driver you didn't understand, I can just elaborate at that point. Okay. So, and you guys have requested me to send this project. I couldn't do it right now because I tried zipping the project and it was exceeding more than 25 MB. So we are just working out, a couple of other ways so that this particular test project is available to all of you. And there is an environment being set up for you guys so that you guys can just log in over there and then you can start experimenting or writing your test scripts and practice it and at that particular point. Okay, so you will get those details soon today or tomorrow, and you should be good for practicing over there. Fine. Any other doubts? Anyone? Okay, so I hope you guys are able to see my screen. If anybody has any issues with my screen or screen share or voice, just let me know. No, no issues? Okay, so let's continue today with the next set of topics. So right now, since you guys are clear or we are seeing through what is a normal program, Selenium program project, and how to interact with elements in the now web page. Today, what we're going to see is we're gonna go ahead and then actually check write few JUnit test cases, which will actually run a couple of test cases over a given page. Okay, so is everybody familiar with JUnit test cases, or you want me to take a brief session regarding what is a JUnit test case? So anybody who don't know what is a JUnit test case? Everybody knows JUnit test case? Okay, fine. So fine. So let me just explain you what is the JUnit test case and why do we use them in a holistic perspective. Okay. So first thing is when you write a piece of code, for example, Let me take. So this is the page. This is one of our applications. So this is which we're going to use it as an example for today's experimentation or today's session. Okay. So we have actually developed this application, and this particular page contains a text box, password box, and a login button. And this has some functionalities as such. And same way, it can be any page. So it will have certain items and certain functionalities. So when you write a normal program, so that program actually does the rendering or the execution or building of the particular scenarios or the pages. Now your JUnit is a place where you can write a test logic to test the presence and the execution or the functionalities of that particular uh, application which you have built. Okay, so one place where you can actually put your test cases is nothing but the JUnit. Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys? Okay, fine. So what I was saying is, JUnit is a place where you write a piece of logic or codes over the items or an application which is already built. Okay, so JUnit is nothing but Java unit test cases. So just a brief abbreviation, and this is how a general JUnit test case would look like, where we have this something called as annotations. Okay, so I what I did is I created a normal Java program. Okay, and I started writing a couple of functions. So this is a function, this is a function, and this is another function. Okay, now what are the scenarios which you need to know when you are executing a JUnit? Okay, so there is this particular annotation called as at the rate before and at the rate after. Okay, so what is this at the rate before and at the rate after works for? So whenever you write a scenario, let me just take a piece. Say you want to write, okay, a test case for a particular page. So assume that you are writing a test case for this particular page. Okay, okay. So what is the problem? Are they late for joining, Sarita? So will they be joining, or is there any technical issue while joining? Will they be late to join? Uh, okay. So what is it? Any error? URL not able to hit the URL? I see. They were able to join earlier, or is it possible for them to actually, join with the others and just attend the meeting session? Is it possible for you guys to share among system among yourself? Okay, fine. We'll wait for 2 minutes. So just ask them to try it in a different browser or ask them to check for the proxy. So just check the normal internet connection. If the internet connection is working in the browser, then try the URL. If the URL is still not able to access, just ask them to check the proxy. So we'll just wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll start. So it's almost most of them have joined. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes. Hey guys, what is the difference between Selenium IDE? Okay, so we have actually taken this earlier. Uh, so we have a question over here saying that what is the difference between Selenium IDE and a Selenium WebDriver? So Selenium IDE is a plugin in a Firefox browser as such, which will help you to do, test your scenarios or test your web page in the browser as such. Okay, and whereas Selenium WebDriver is nothing but the API which we are looking right now, which will be a proper test script which we can actually write a script and then execute it every now and then. So what we are seeing right now is nothing but a Selenium WebDriver. NIDE is a plugin in a Firefox, which is you can just test it in a browser as such. That's all. Okay. Now, coming back to the GUnit, okay. Now, let's just take a page. So this is a page which we are actually looking for, okay. And if you see here, there are two kinds of things. One is the presence of elements, and the second thing is the functionalities. Okay, so if a person or a tester is supposed to test the particular page, so first would be there would be three scenarios or there would be four scenarios if you see. Okay, first is the presence of the username text box. Okay, so next is the password text box, then the login button. The fourth would be the once the user enters the username and password and then clicks on login, the page should log in. So the application should log into the dashboard page. Okay. So these are the overall test cases which I would write for a given login page. Okay. Now if you see here, so what do you do in scenario one? In scenario one, okay. So first is I would initialize my browser, my web driver. Okay, and next is I would load the page. Okay, and the next step is check for the text box. Then the fourth thing is you actually check if it is present or not through the respective error, and then finally you close the driver. Okay, fine. Now if you see here, what do you do in the second scenario, second test case? So you do the almost the same thing. So first you have to initialize a web driver. Okay, next is the load the page. Third is check for the password box. Okay, and then finally close the driver. And third thing again something repeated, right? So if you see here any test case you write or for a particular page or a particular scenario, there can exist a certain set of repeated items before and after the test case, right? So it is for that particular reason why we have this particular function called before class and after class. Okay, so what does this before class and after class do? So in before class I would write all my scenarios like initialize the web driver and load a page. Okay, and in after driver probably I would write all the cases which would follow after my test case is successfully or fail to execute. Okay, so how would the execution go? So assume that I have written one particular function for before execution and one particular function for after execution. Okay, so I have class after class. Okay, so this is one function. This is the second function. So this does nothing but loading the page, and this does nothing but closing my driver. So, and then all I have to do is in my respective test cases, the function where the actual test goes. Okay, all I have to do is the write the logic for testing that particular scenario only. Okay, now the JUnit framework will make sure that it actually calls the before and after classes or the functions before for every test case. So the execution goes like this. So let's take 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this is how the execution goes. 1, okay, 2, and then sorry, let's say this is 4, and then 1, 3, and 2. 1, 4, and 2. 1, 5, and 2, and so on. Okay, so this is basic structure of a test case. When you write, you need to make sure that you always have, you know, pre-processing, processing, and a post-processing logic. And how do you specify the before a func class as a before class is like this. Okay, so this is nothing but annotation. So when you write at the rate before class, so it becomes a piece of logic which should execute before every function which is handled as at the rate test. Okay, clear? And at the rate after class, the moment you write this particular at the rate after class, hello? Yeah, so when you write at the rate class after class on top of a function, it becomes your post-processing logic. Okay, and when you run the particular test case, which we will do it in short time, where I will show you how does this particular test case results in. So we actually have a failure scenario and a successful scenario which this particular IED shows, and then you can actually be sure, okay, this particular thing is present and this particular thing is not present. Okay, so let me go ahead and then show a couple of examples of what we have actually discussed right now. So any questions so far? So why JUnit? What is a JUnit and why JUnit? And what is the basic structure of JUnit? So what is a before and what is after and what is a thread test? So any point where I have to repeat again? Everybody is clear? Uh, hey, is anybody trying to say something? Your voice is not very clear. Hello? No questions? So we'll go and check, try execute a sample JUnit test case. Yes, no? Okay, fine, fine. So, so this is a basic sample page which we have over here, where, like I explained, so we have a text box, two text box, the click button. Okay, so I have written this particular piece of code. Let me just go line by line. So I have named this particular class. All I need to do is create a new class, and I have initialized a global variable or a class variable, which is accessible throughout all the functions of my class, which is the driver. And I have initialized my driver in my before class, the pre-processing logic, and I have closed it in my post-processing at the rate after. Okay, now since this is also pretty common, let me just go ahead and then add this particular logic over here. Okay, so I'm going to change this particular thing. So this is a final login check, but okay. So let me just go ahead and add a couple of more test cases where which does the basic processing of username check and say password check, just to see how this particular execution flow works. Okay, now I'm gonna say so the ID for this particular username box would be username, and I'm gonna use this assert uh, function which helps me to check. So assert is nothing. So when I say assert dot assert true, so if this particular scenario, whichever I return inside is if it returns true, then my test case successfully executes. If it returns false, my test case basically fails. Okay, so that is what the usage of this particular assert true is, and I'm gonna do the same thing for the other part. Let me just comment this out for now. Let's just execute small piece. So the moment I start executing this, so you can actually Yeah, so you can actually see this particular tab which opens up, okay, and it starts showing this particular progress bar. So this is the thing which indicates the number of test cases you have written, okay, and this is nothing but a progress bar where it. So if all the test cases are through, then it says it stays green, and here you can actually see for the particular package the functions which you have actually written. It shows if it's successfully executed or not. So let's go ahead and actually inverse the scenario where I should say that the ID shouldn't be found. The ID is found, then just throw an error. If it is not found, then it will be correct true. But then the current scenario, since the ID exists, this particular username exists, it should throw an error. See this? So this is the summary of the test cases. So he says one is failure, and that particular one is this. And the reason is the particular assert has written false. So if you observe here, I have not written the scenario of I have neither called these functions from any place, nor I have written the logic of this complete logic of initializing the WebDriver and loading the page and etc. in each of these test cases. So the moment I attach these particular annotations, so the rest of the thing is actually done by the web JUnit framework as such, where it implicitly calls this particular test case before and then executes this continuously one after the other, and then finally it closes the browser since I've written driver that close at the end. Clear? Anybody having any doubt? No questions? Okay, fine. So next, what we're going to do is in today's session, basically we're going to see, a couple of just scenarios, and we're going to try out multiple ways of testing, a web page as such. So today, all we're going to see is, we're going to go one after the other example, and we're just going to run these test cases and see how these things behave. Okay, fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute a login check. Okay, so where I enter the username, I enter the password and say click on login. Okay, and then I'm gonna check for a how do I act. So this is scenario where you're gonna do a login check as such. So here, in order to check if the particular page is logged in or not, so what I'm going to do is I'm gonna check for a particular CSS and then decide whether this particular page is logged in or not. So if you see, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check for this particular class white hyphen blue to make sure the page has been logged in. Okay, fine. So for this, I'm gonna use the explicit wait, as I'm explicitly checking for a particular element as such. I'm just gonna comment this. So what I'm saying is, by default, just wait for 20 seconds. Okay, but just in case, if you find this particular element which I have specified over here clickable, then just exit. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. Okay, fine. So what has happened over here is it has actually logged in and then failed the other scenarios. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna put a wait. I will just say thread.sleep. So sleep for say 2 seconds. Right, so let me just write this in order. Okay, so what is happening over here is since we have initialized this loading of the page only once, uh, that is why the second and the third one is failing. So let's just copy paste it over here. and then run it. Okay, so what's happening over here is first the precondition is ran once, okay, and then all of these test cases are executed, and then the post processing is executed. So we just need to make sure that whatever we put in the post processing doesn't impact the other stuff. Since I've already logged in into the page, these particular test cases are failing. So where the username and password doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Any doubts over here? Anyone? Any questions? So this was a basic test case for me to test the page elements and the functionalities. So next we're gonna go ahead and then try something complex over the page. But before that, are you guys clear about this? No doubts at all? Yeah, sure. So we'll just have a repeat. Just give me a minute. So which part of it you didn't really understand? So if you can just let me know, I can focus at that particular point. Dharman, so can you just tell at which point you had some doubt, or we'll just repeat the whole thing? Okay, so let's just go through it, and there is one more point. Yeah, so we'll just recap the whole thing. And just before me telling you guys, before going to the same thing, let me just tell you the difference. So there are two things: at the rate before and at the rate before class. Okay. Now the difference between the at the rate before and at the rate before classes, uh, as you have seen here, I explained. So the sequence of step execution is, so before class, uh, is not the one which is being used. It's after, before and after. So if you use before, it will be executed, you know, before every test case. Okay, whereas at the rate before class will be used only once. So if you use at the rate before class, then it will, the sequence of execution will be 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6 and then 2. Okay, so that is what has happened right now, where earlier I have used the rate before class, where it was this particular pre-processing was called only once, but moment we use at the rate before, it will be called every time before a test function is being executed. Okay, so we'll see that now once more. Okay, so what am I trying to do right now? So I have a page. So I have this page. Now I'm trying to write some test cases for this particular page. So what are my test cases? My first test case is to check if this particular text box exists. My second case is to check if this particular password box exists. And my third test case is to check the login functionality as such. Okay. Now for my first test case, what are all the things required for me? Okay. So things required is, one is for me to initialize this Firefox WebDriver, okay, and then the load the URL, okay, and this is a temporary, so it's not very compulsory. So I just like to maximize my window, and then write a condition to check if this particular ID is accessible or not. So I'm going to access my particular text box with this ID username, and then check if that particular thing exists or not. Okay, it's true or false. Fine. The same way for my test case 2, what I need is, again, so I need a WebDriver, initialize a WebDriver, okay, and load the URL, and then do the same thing. Fine. So in my third test case, so I'm just gonna initialize my stuff, WebDriver, then I'm gonna just enter the username password and then click on the login button. And once I click on login, I'm just checking with an element. So once I logged in, so in my dashboard, there exists a particular div element, so which has a class. So I'm just going to see if that particular thing is clickable or not. So the moment that particular element is clickable, which means that my log page has been logged in. So that is my test case scenario. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and see the test case scenarios, so there are certain common parts which are like initialize a web page, a web driver, load the page, and then close the driver. So these are the before and after case scenarios which are present in my test case. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and then so I have just put those particular scenarios in my before case, and in my after case, all I'm doing is I'm just closing the driver. Okay, and I have written a test case, one test case to check the username exists or not, text box, and the second test case to check if this particular password exists or not, and the third test case is for my login check to check if the particular login exists or not. Okay, now I have just check over here. So I have used a thread before and a thread after, which essentially means this particular piece of code is going to get executed every time for every test case I have written on here. Fine. So I'm going to execute this. Okay, so I just got to say. So if you see, for the login check. So first, I mean, the order is for now random. So it's executing the login check for now. So where it has logged in. Then it is checking for the second test case where it has initialized the browser again. And the third time again. So if you see here, for every test case, the browser is initialized and then closed. And all my test cases are passed. Clear? Now, at the same time, if I used the rate after, and before class and after class. So here, this particular piece of logic, which we have written function, is going to be execute only once. So which will actually fail my second and third cases as I have already logged in. So this was the issue which has gone through. Okay, and this has to be static. So if you see, since I have already logged in, and then it tries to execute the second and third test case, which will fail as those particular text boxes are not present in that particular dashboard. So this particular annotation becomes handy when you just want something to be executed only once and once for all the test cases, not for every test case. So now the same thing happens where every time for every test case there's going to be a browser and it's going to execute successfully. See why? Because the logic pre-processing is executed every single time for every test case. Clear? Dharman, any questions by any other person? The main function and the annotation. Uh, what do you mean by a main function? Okay, so annotations are nothing but first thing is like it's a tag which you give it for a single function, okay, which helps the particular framework. So in this case, the JUnit framework as such to identify what is that particular function is written for. So in this scenario, so we have this particular set of annotations. So we have at the rate before, we have at the rate before class. So we have at the rate test. We have at the rate after and at the rate after class. Okay. Now at the rate before, so moment you actually say a function when you tag, so this is called tagging a function as for annotate a function as at the rate before. So the JUnit framework understands that this particular function is to be called every time before it calls this particular function which is tagged or annotated as at the rate test. Clear? So that is why, so this annotation is a means of, you know, telling the framework that this is what is my function does, what this is the use of my function. Okay, and it follows a series of protocols. Say, as I said, so at the rate before is called before the execution of every test case. So this is one my test case, and this is my another test case, and this is my another test case. Okay, so before execution of every function, my at the rate before is being called. Okay, whereas at the rate before class is called only once before execution of all my test cases. So the JUnit, so moment you write at the rate before class, so the JUnit understands that this particular piece of logic is to be executed only once, and then all the test cases and the at the rate after. Okay, so this is my, you know, annotation classes, and in if you consider you want a main function, so this would act something like a main function where represents each test case or test scenario in this particular JUnit. So does this answer your question? Yeah, so there is no need to write a mandatory main function as such in this particular JUnit. As I said, the JUnit framework takes care of calling the respective functions in order. So the way you write the annotations, the execution follows accordingly. Fine. So any other question? Anybody else? Because after this, we're gonna look into a bit of complex page. So and see how we can go ahead and write a test case. So this is a simple login test for a page. And what is the reason for me to write, uh, a test scenario or a particular element test, a separate test case? The reason is, say today this particular application which we are looking at is say a version v1.2. Okay, and I write a test case for this particular page. Okay, and after some particular deployments in the version 1.4, so the developers probably might have some made some changes, maybe some changes in this particular page, or may not be any changes. So how would you go ahead and tell that whatever the functionalities which are present in 1.2, or whatever things which are working in 1.2 also work in this one version 1.4? Okay, the simple way is, as we have written these test cases for each and every aspect of the page. So whenever you just have to take the application, hit the URL and run these test cases, and this particular JUnit automation will tell you which part of the test case failed and which part of the test case succeeded. Now, if your login check or if your password check has been failed, which essentially means that the user has gone and changed the ID of this particular thing, or this particular element password doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so just by running this particular test case, I'll be clear if my main functionalities or all my elements and the functionalities of the page still works without any issue or not. So that's the whole reason why we have separate test scenarios in a single test uh, you know case as such. And one more thing to just add up, in general, when you create a project, so assume you have a package which has all your functionalities as such. So you just maintain another package which will have all the test cases for all those functionalities for each page as such. Okay, fine. So this is where the package will help you in differentiating your logic versus your test cases. Okay, and generally you just create one particular class and you just write all your test cases in that particular class per page. So you can say login.java and write all the login related test cases or test scenarios in that particular class. And moment I say dashboard.test, it is assumed that all the test cases regarding or test scenarios regarding the dashboard page falls under this particular class. So this is how, in general, a classification of the code happens in a project. Okay. Understood or confused somewhere? So this was just for general understanding how you use a test case package classes as such. Any doubts? Anyone? Okay, fine. So we're gonna go ahead and then see some more examples for the next page. Okay, so I have logged in. So before we go ahead and write a test case, so one main thing is to understand or have a features list for a particular given page as such. Let me just maximize this. Did we cover all the concepts? So what does this page do? Okay, so this page has, let's say, let's just list down the features as such. Okay, so this page has multiple attributes. Again, so first is the sliding functionalities. So if you see, so this particular page has two main containers. Okay, so one is map and another one is map one. So moment you or it's a time based page, so for every 30 seconds so there is a next set of industry or something which is loaded and it slides to the left where the previous one is hidden and the current existing one is shown. Fine. So this particular cycle happens for every 30 seconds. So that is test case scenario one, sliding for every 30 seconds. Okay, and the next thing is what we need to check is we have multiple buttons over here. So each one is having a set of functionalities. So one is the previous slide, one is the toggle start or stop, and the next one is the next slide. Okay, So we're gonna have to test all these particular three scenarios where the previous slide, the toggle part, the next slide. And apart from this, there are other test cases which you can actually go ahead and check for the chart being loaded, for the values, color coding, and etc. But then let's go step by step. And the third thing is the click event, where you click on a particular item in this list. The respective items get loaded. Okay, so this is the another scenario which we have. Fine. So on a high level, so these are the set of tests which you can perform to start with to check if this particular page is functioning or not. These are nothing but the features list where for this page, and we're gonna do this functional testing to check whether the page is working fine or not. Okay, so you guys understood what we are trying to do over here? Any questions? Because I'm gonna ask you guys regarding how would you actually go ahead and try checking for each scenario. Are you guys clear regarding the functionalities aspect? Yes, no? Okay, fine. So now that we have identified the test cases, or test scenarios, uh, so what would be my, can you guys just think of what would be my at the rate, what would go, what's the logic which would go under at the rate before and at the rate after? Can one of you just say what would be the steps which I can just push into at the rate before and after? Anyone? Just a logical scenarios, what would go under at the rate before and at the rate after? Nobody? Yeah, so these are the five test scenarios or five functions which exist in the page, and we are supposed to write the test case or test cases for testing each one of them. Correct. So each one of them should be at the rate test. So what I'm asking is before going into at the rate test, okay, so one is application launching. So that would be initializing the WebDriver, right? So we're gonna have to, before doing the login, we need to load the page, okay? And yeah, anyways, we are hard coding the link for the web page. So let's assume the link is correct. So we just initialize the driver, we load the page, and we do the logging. Since we have already ran through our test case for login, we assume so we can just go ahead and put the login logic into the @ before, and it should execute successfully. Okay, so this is the set of things which will go into the @ before, and @ after we can write we can straight away close the browser, or if you want you can write the log out functionality and then close the browser. Verification and capture the login, as in you want to test if the particular login has successfully happened or not. Yeah, so what I'm saying is, since we have already ran our login test and since it has successfully executed, we can assume that login works or the same credentials work successfully fine. Okay, so we have the second dashboard, the second test case, where I have initialized my Firefox browser driver. I have loaded my dashboard. Okay, and I am not checking here for, again I'm not checking for username, assuming that username already exists. Else, anyways, the test case would fail in @ before. Okay, and let me just change this to @ before. So I'm just going to just write this particular scenario and just wait till the particular thing gets load. Okay, and after that, what is the first thing? So first test case is, let me just dashboard load. Let me just so I'm just going to go ahead and I was testing something. So first thing is, let me just check a small test to check if this particular page is loading or not. Okay, so what I have done here is, so I've written a small test case to check if this particular dashboard as such is loaded, which essentially means uh, I'm checking if the other one is hidden. So on the load, the scenario what we know is map 1 should be hidden and map should be shown. So we're gonna go ahead and then test for one case where we are checking if this particular thing is displayed or not, which essentially gives us a condition to check if this particular dashboard is loaded successfully or not. It's one of the scenarios. though it's little high level, so we're just going to test it using this scenario for now. Okay, so let me just launch it. So right now the at the rate before is executing, and you can actually see this particular thing is not displayed, which means it is hidden. So since I've given an at the rate exclamation, which means that it is not displayed. So if I actually say assert true is displayed, then this particular scenario would fail. See this? This has failed because this particular thing is not displayed. Okay, so which essentially means it concludes that our dashboard is loading if this particular scenario is executed successfully. Fine. So this concludes our basic testing. Then we can let's just go for the one of the other cases. Okay. So the first case is to check if the particular page is sliding after the 30 seconds. Okay. So what should we do? So this is the case where first I'm going to check if the map single map is loaded. So at this particular point, my map is loaded. Then I'm just gonna put my program for sleep for 35 seconds because there's nothing I want to test for the next 30 seconds. And then I'm gonna check again if my map is one is loaded, and it should also satisfy that my map 2 is hidden. Okay, so let's just test it out. The first scenario got executed successfully, where the dashboard looks fine. And currently we are checking for the second scenario. I guess we just have to wait for 35 seconds. Okay, fine. So if you see here, let me just print these statements. so that you guys are clear of what is actually happening inside this assert. So it's basically just a boolean. Case 1 is done. In the case 2, so if you see the first scenario is actually successfully executed where it says true, so assert true is true, and the second scenario where my map container, so the map 1, so after 35 seconds my map 1 should be displayed and map 2 should not be displayed, right? So ideally this has to be exclamation, then our test case would have been executed successfully. So what I'm saying is, if you see here, it says my map container is not displayed, so is displayed should be false, right? And my map, the first map after 35 seconds is not displayed. Since I have not given the exclamation, so this assert has thrown an exception saying that the condition whatever we are checking for is false. So you guys are clear with the condition which we have written over here. So is the test case for this scenario 1 clear? Uh, what do you mean by can we execute and verify the test case? Yeah, so I'm running it. Anyways, it will take some time. So what actually happened is I accidentally removed this exclamation. So after 30 seconds, this particular map will be hidden. As it slides off, it will be hidden. So the is display returns me false. Okay. So this condition returns me false, and when I'm checking for asserted true, I should give the condition say such a way that it should result to true. Okay, so the negation of false will be true. So that is what I am supposed to put. Okay, so that is what I missed in the first in while adding the sysO. I just removed it accidentally. Clear? So step 1, the map should be loaded. Step 2, map 1 should be visible. And step 3, the map should be hidden. So this particular case returns false. Right, okay. So the map 1 is nothing but the container which, so there are two main containers as I explained. So map and the map 1. Okay. So the way the sliding actually happens is, if you see here, once moment it slides, the content which would come in the next particular slide will be loaded in the consecutive next slider. Got it? So on the load, the map contains the content and the map 1 will be hidden. After 30 seconds, the content will be loaded into the map 1 and the animation for sliding will be shown and map will be hidden. So that is why I've given an additional margin for 35 seconds and checked for the same div IDs, okay, which will be hidden, which should be ideally hidden. So this particular map 1 is nothing but the other container. Clear? So map and the map 1 are nothing but the div IDs of two div containers which will just contain the current slide and the next slide. That's all. Clear? Or you guys want me to repeat? Anybody else with any question? Okay. Now let's just go to the next test case where we have previous slide. Okay. So what is the functionality of this? So when I see previous slide, so there exists a button which has an ID. So on the click of this particular button, so they should ideally, load the one which it should ideally load the slide which was shown earlier. Okay. So how would you guys ideally test this particular scenario? So any ideas? So you guys know that we have a page with, say, this would be your key, assume the site name, and after every 30 seconds it loads the other one, and the moment you click on back it should load the same one again. Okay, so that is the scenario. How would you guys uh, can you guys just think of what would be the sequence of steps to be written to test this functionality? Think of the sequence of steps to be executed to test the previous slide functionality. Or let's just do the next slide. Next and previous might be almost the same. Let's just check for the next slide. Next or previous, anything. So can you guys tell me the sequence of steps? Logical steps to start with. If this page were to be given to you, how would you test it? So just testing the particular div IDs might not, work actually. You might have to search for a particular content. In this case, I would say the industry name, which is displayed over here, would be the key, and check for the slide as such. So what I'm asking is, what is the sequence of steps which you would follow to execute this particular test scenario? Anyone? Yeah, so at the rate after is decided, at the rate before is decided. So we have already decided what is to be there in at the rate before. So what we are speaking right now is what is to become in at the rate test. Okay. So for at the rate previous, okay. So you click on the next button. Fine. So first we need to figure out where what is how to find the header. Okay. So for previous, okay. So what we're going to do is we're gonna capture the header. Step one. Capture the header. Then let's not go for the next button as such. Let's okay. We shall wait. So we're gonna run two scenarios. One is previous and the next. So let's try execute them in two different ways. So we're gonna wait for 30 seconds or 35 seconds. Okay, and capture the header again. Okay, so case number one is header should not match. Then we're gonna click on the previous. Yes, we can wait after the previous. Then we're gonna click on previous. Okay, or there is no need, we can actually skip this. So you just load the page, capture the headers, click on the previous, get the header value again, and header should not match. Yeah, so that is what we're gonna do it. Okay, so we're gonna skip the wait for 30 seconds step. So load the page, capture the headers, click on the previous, capture the header value again, and we can just check. We can check the header values not matching or not. But in this particular case, you will never know that the exact previous one is loading or it is some other slide which is loading. Correct? Whereas in scenario 2, where you capture the current header, either wait or click on the next, capture the header again, and check if the header mismatch, and then click on previous and capture the header again. And the first header and the current header should match the values. So in that particular scenario, we can make sure that the slide has successfully executed the previous slide. Correct? We got exactly the same previous slide which was loaded a minute ago or a half a minute ago. Agreed? So let's go ahead and then. Okay. So what is actually happening is somebody had a doubt regarding the second scenario. Okay. So what is happening is in the first case, what we thought of doing is so we have the page. Okay. So we say that moment the page is loaded, we will just check for this particular header. Okay. And then we'll straight away go ahead and click on the previous where a new slide will be loaded. So we'll have a new slide which will be loaded. Okay. And then we'll capture the header value again and say that headers do not match, which means the slide has changed from one particular place to other particular place. Okay. Whereas in second scenario, so in the first scenario, we will not see, we can actually say that the slide changes on the click of the button. Okay. But we are not assuring that the functionality of the previous button, which is essentially that it should actually load the exact header on the click of the previous button, which was existing earlier. Okay. So that is not assured over here. So that is where in scenario 2, what we are saying is we will capture the current header, wait for the 30 seconds, okay, and then let the slider move, okay, and then capture the header 2, okay, and just make sure that both the headers and the header 2 doesn't match, and then click on previous button, and then capture the header again. And now this header and this particular header should match, which will assure us that we have exactly got the previous slide on the click of the previous button. And the purpose of the previous button is working fine. Clear? Sabina, you want me to repeat the scenario 2 again? The scenario 2 is to make sure that the functionality or the purpose of the previous button is checked. That's all. So I think there is one more suggestion. Yeah, so that we can explicitly wait and check uh, to make sure the particular dashboard is loaded. Dharman, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and try putting the explicit wait and see how it exactly works. Okay. So let's write the case 2 where we are checking for, let me just comment this. So I'm gonna write the test. Okay. So the step 1. So first is we need to figure out how can we capture the particular header value. So this is the one where widget header map 1. Okay. So I'm just going to use this particular CSS selector and say string header value current header value. Okay, so I got the current header value, and next is wait for 30 seconds. So for wait, I'm just gonna put this thread.sleep. Then I'm gonna read the header again. Let me just print, sorry, just in case. So we have the current header, we have the next header. Now I'm gonna go ahead and so just check assert dot assert true, where next header not equal to current header. So this is case 1, and my case 2 would be, next step is I will have to click on the previous. So which is pretty straightforward. I can just use you can do anyways. So here if you click on next button, we can execute both the ways. Yeah, so you can execute both the ways, but in this case you are trying to check both the next and this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I was planning to show both the ways. So if you guys just want the next button, we can just go ahead and do that. Driver dot find element by id dot click. Okay, so once I click on next, I will have to make sure I gonna wait till my WebDriver is visible. So I'm just going to get this particular piece of code. And say that, so on the load my map will be visible on the click of next, my map 1 will be visible. Just wait for 10 seconds, not more than that. Okay, so I'm waiting till my map 1 is visible. Then I'm taking the headers. I'm checking if my headers are true or not. And then I'm gonna just go ahead and, so this is my next slide. Let me just check if it's next or something else. Yeah. Okay, then the same. I'm gonna wait till the other one, which is the map is visible. Okay, and then I'm gonna have to copy it, the header value again. Then I'm gonna assert saying my header value should be equal to my current header value. Clear? So step one, take the current header value. I'm just printing the current header value. Then I'm gonna just click on execute a click event or the next slide. Wait till my map one div is loaded container. Then I'm gonna read my next header and make sure the next slide is loaded successfully or not. So this actually helps you to check the next slide functionality. Okay. After that, I'm gonna click on the previous slide. Wait till my map is loaded. Then after that, I'm gonna read my header again and assert saying that my current header value again should be equal to my previous current value header value. Clear? Fine. So let me just comment out the other test case while it will be just waste of time. Dashboard previous and on. So the only thing we need to make sure that we are actually reading the header value in this scenario. Okay. So let's see. Browser is initialized. So let's see the print statements which are coming up over here. So at my the rate before is executing. Okay, so what happened? So I'm gonna make sure that this particular thing is loaded. So I will have to put a wait. To make sure that browser or our processing waits till this particular element is loaded. Okay. It failed again. Okay, so I said clickable. Let me just change the weight even to map one. So I need to make sure that. So I'm just gonna increase my time. I think the network is slow. No, what happened? Let me just close this. Okay. When I click on the next slide, web driver CSS selector map hash one. Okay, CSS selector hash map. Fine. So if it's by ID, I should give only map one. If it is a CSS selector, I should have given it as hash map one, as hash represents the ID as such. Just the network issue. Let's try it again. Okay. So what happened? So these two are different, right? Dashboard test case 2, line number 92. Okay. Second thing loaded. Third thing. Okay, so it's not able to get this particular text. Let me just say that this particular thing is loaded. So it is same, right? It is printing the same value, but then for some reason it is throwing error. Maybe it has to do something with the string comparison, but overall that is the scenario. Okay, it's throwing error because it might be because of some string comparison, or maybe I should say dot equals same here. It should work now. Fine. So whenever you have two strings, never compare them with a normal equals to. You should use this particular function, then it will work. You guys clear? Or you want me to just wrap it up and show once more what is actually happening? You guys are here? Anybody, any questions? No questions? Cool. So, so ideally we have also done partially implemented this particular thing. So next and previous we have implemented. Now let's just skip to the fifth part. Okay. So what about this? Any ideas? So what do we have in this? Okay. So what do we have is, let me just open it. So what I have is we have this particular list over here, and the functionality is you click on this particular list, the respective details should be loaded. Okay, so that is the functionalities. So how would you, looking at the screen, so this time how would you actually go for and you know test this particular functionality? Any thoughts? So what would be my CSS selector, and what would be my condition to check if that particular graph or something is loaded? Right. So I click, this what happens. Graph name and the list name clicked should be same. Yeah, so do you need to capture the parameter list first? That's the question. Why would you need to capture the parameter list? The capture as in you want to read the values or you just want to highlight it. Let me just reload. Yes, tell me. What's the question? Mm, couple of them are static, couple of them are not static, but then the functionality you have the functionality, whatever you want to test. Yes, the position of the CSS is moving, but still the particular div will still exist in the page. There is nothing stopping us from clicking. So I can still click, I can write a program to click this even if it is moving. Okay, fine. So let me go to the file path, select this. So this will be my particular piece. Keep the mouse operator towards the parameter content list. I doubt if there is such functionality in this. Okay. Okay. So I need to specifically say that this will be a problem. Hmm. I cannot. I need to do some string operations before I can do something. There should be a way for me to select only the first one. Okay, so let's use XPath for now. So in this case, we might have to do some additional, you know, string operations to get our test working. Okay, so first step, I'm just gonna make sure that the particular thing which we are searching for exists, and I'm gonna change this to XPath expression. So we be sure that we have a div, and I'm gonna store it as list name equal to element dot get text. Let me just print this text. Then I'm gonna execute the exact click event. Let's just check on what exactly do I have the click profile activity. Right, okay. And next step is to get this particular where I do the same thing. String chart name, and I'm gonna click on second item. Now the first one, we're going to just click on second item. And I'm gonna just put thread.sleep for half a second just to make sure the page loads. Say 1 second. And I'm gonna comment this out. Set true equals listening. Now we might not execute this successfully because when I say dot get text, of this particular div, I'm gonna have a lot of other things. So I'm gonna just perform a string operation to extract only the one which is right. Let's just execute. Okay. So we got BOD and we failed. Okay, so it cannot be that ID. So what is that? This should be 2, which I get. I click on 2, and this cannot be that ID. So I have to get something else. So I got COD success. Okay, fine. So any questions over the test cases? How we can execute? How we can write a JUnit? So I just showed you some simple complex scenarios for testing with the example I have. So if you guys have any questions so far, we can be open for questions. And mostly we are done for today. I'm gonna stop here. And tomorrow we're gonna come and see a few more concepts in the testing as such Selenium. So for today, any doubts you guys are able to follow how to go for testing a page? What are the scenarios to be taken? What are different ways of testing? Obviously, so there will be different ways of testing a different functionality. What is a JUnit? How to write a JUnit case? What is the use of at the rate before, at the rate test, at the rate after, and etc. So you guys clear? Any questions? I am open. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we're gonna end our session a little early today. So this is what I was planned for. So if you guys have any questions in any other things, we can discuss. Else, we can wrap it up for the day. Okay. So once you guys get the environment, which you will be getting the mails regarding that. So just try setting up the project. Try running few tests using the JUnit, and let me know if you guys have any issues tomorrow. Okay. Chalo. Thanks, guys. Thanks for attending. Thank you.